This podcast contains adult themes and language. The views expressed here are our own opinions and experiences. We are not medical professionals.
In this podcast, we discuss our opinions about mental health, sobriety, addiction, and our pursuit of happiness and peace. This is Sober Mind.
Odie.
That's all they wanted.
Yep.
Yeah, they just wanted their bed and to be involved
They
somehow.
just want to be involved.
Oh, yeah, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Saturday.
Or in Odie's case, it'd be good evening.
Yeah. Good morning, Fem. Second. Odie's always first. My name is John.
I'm Judy.
And I'm Patrick.
Welcome to Sober Mind, where we have grown folk conversations. We get knee deep into some shit, you guys. We talk through it. The mental health, the sobriety, all kinds of good stuff.
We get knee deep into the S just because we're there automatically. Sometimes we don't purposely get into it. We're just there.
We just exist there sometimes.
Yeah.
This morning we are joined with Puka and Ozzy, who are our dogs, who are right in front. So if you see any kind of dog wandering around, it's close to Christmas, so we figured we'd give them a little treat. They're luckily passed out right now, so.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into it. Today we're going to talk about cravings and how we manage them. Let's get some...
Fem says, I have my hip waders on. I'm good.
Good. All right, we'll be streaming some a very lo-fi Christmas by Harris Heller, Stream Beats. Free for you to use on all of your streaming needs. Odie, let me know if the music's too loud. I have a certain volume that I want it at for the viewers. Okay. So, Patrick, Merry fucking Christmas.
Merry fucking Christmas. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Where's the Tylenol?
Man, what a year it's been. All right, we'll do like a recap in January, but let's get into today's subject. So before we talk about gratitude, what we're going to do is talk about cravings and how we...
And triggers.
And how we manage or confront or deal with those. But I thought in order to cue this up, we would each individually talk about our history with drugs and or alcohol use and abuse. So that way it'll paint the picture of why we crave things, why I had a visceral reaction to the wine display at Hy-Vee yesterday.
And why certain things send us off and what triggers kind of happen.
Yeah. But before we get into that, let's jump in with gratitude. Oh, Christmas in Serbia is on January 7th. Oh, you know why? That's how long it takes Santa Claus to get over there.
It comes from Serbian Orthodox.
Yeah.
They do calculations off of the Julian calendar instead of the Gregorian calendar.
Well, Lati fucking da. Look who's a learned individual, Patrick.
That's for another show. I was actually baptized in the Greek Orthodox Church.
Oh, I did not know that.
So
that could be another show for sure.
yeah, raised Mormon. Well,
I didn't know that, Patrick.
RLDS, so Reorganized Church of the Latter-day Saints.
Wow.
And then baptized in the Greek Orthodox Church. Spent a long time doing youth camp and youth-oriented activities. And that and then yada yada yada, here I am, right?
Yeah. I think that we could get into some deep discussions. Judy's Buddhism, yada yada, him or her sister, here they are now.
Yep.
Well, I was actually baptized Presbyterian and then received Gojukai, which is a baptism of Buddhism. So I got the double whammy.
I did not know that.
I got the double whammy.
Patrick, you probably receive mixed signals about Judy's Buddhism sometimes, because I know you're a huge fan of the philosophy and following it. But we'll get into that whole another show.
Another
To
episode.
be honest, I'm a huge fan of a lot of the teachings in Christianity too.
Oh, me too.
You know, it's that's a whole nother episode to talk about the dogma that comes with structured religion and
Yes.
other pieces like that. So
Yeah, I was baptized Catholic.
And the human influence.
Yep.
You were baptized Catholic?
Yeah, remember in Switzerland. I was an altar boy and everything. Never had my wiener touched.
Good for you.
Hold on. Anyway, gratitude.
Yes.
focus.
Yeah,
You just scrolled out there.
I know. I have a ton of gratitude again for my sobriety. This is me and Judy's third Christmas. Patrick, I think you're fourth or fifth.
Fourth.
Yeah,
Nice.
Holy shit.
Fist bump.
yeah. And our third sober Christmas. And I was talking to Judy in the kitchen the other day, and I was like, man, okay. I posted a short a while ago, and someone made a comment on there of will you count the days? Why do you count the times? It sounds like you still have a lot of problems. Of course, that's what a troll on YouTube would say. And it got me thinking, it's not, I don't count the days. Some people may need those milestones. Shit, some people might need to count the hours when they're going through sobriety. So good for them, whatever tools they need in their tool
The
belt.
minutes.
Yeah. But for me, it's just important to reflect back on how I used to be. That's how I grow. That's what works for me. So when I look back 3 Christmases ago, I was fresh into sobriety, and it was a little bit of a chaotic time because I was like, fuck.
How do I celebrate now?
I don't understand how to just have a baseline level of happiness without booze. So
What do I do with my hands? How do I human?
how do I
That's a good one. How do I human?
Yeah, how do I human being during the the Thanksgiving through New Year fucking drinking binge period that I used to have, and now I got to be sober. So
Plus the inundation you get from media.
yeah, oh for sure. So now I was talking to Judy, like I said, and I feel good that I remembered what you said about the first year and then 2 years and like your third year is the growth of stuff. I feel that this is the best I've felt in 3 years. This is the best Christmas I've felt probably in 20 years. I feel
Nice.
good. I don't feel anxious about stuff. I'm really starting to fucking figure out me and my own skin. That's nice. So that's what I have gratitude for.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Good for you. I'm gonna piggyback on you. That's pretty much what I would say that I have gratitude for, is for my sobriety and being able to have the ability and the space to learn about myself, my own physicality, my own emotional being, and my own spirituality. So yeah, that's what I'm grateful for.
Nice.
My gratitude is something very similar, but it's along the lines of sobriety gives me another chance every day. I felt like when I was like, when you would have bad days and you're like, well, this day fucking sucked, and you're just like, you go drink it out, for the rest of the evening, like, fuck that. But you wake up the next day and you feel like shit, and you have the hangover, and you're anxious and you're nervous, and like it always felt like you were digging out of a hole to get back to normal.
Yeah.
Right. So sobriety, if I didn't have a great day, I can go to bed and then wake up, and either with my routine or whatever, like, that's a fresh start, like that in itself, just not starting out in the negative is a wonderful gift in itself.
Yeah.
It feels like.
Absolutely.
I like the little saying that my brother-in-law says when he texts us, little kind of affirmations in the morning. He says, I'm stoked for the opportunity to be sober for another day.
Yeah. Fem nailed it. Feeling good in your own skin is half the battle.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Didn't you say it was the first year is physical, the second year is emotional, and the third year is spiritual.
Yes.
Of sobriety. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You referred to that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Let's jump into what we used to do with our stuff. We'll take like a good 5 minute in between, and then we'll just start to have the discussions about the cravings. So
Is this in particular around the holidays?
no, this is just in
No, I think
general.
this is just
Okay.
your imbibing history.
Yeah, Judy thought around the holidays would be a good time to talk about it because it is a craving month
Mecca.
for a lot of folks. So I'll try not to go down a soapbox because I know I talk a lot. But so I started drinking when I was in the Army. So at around the age of 20, pretty heavily. We did a lot in the infantry. That's what we did. Just after we get off, we just drink. Fucking weekends, binge drink. Drink before deployments, drink, go on division runs, hungover, all the time. Just drunk, 20-year-old, your body can handle that stuff. Anyway, before that, I was just a teenager that would, sneak some beers once in a while and smoke some joints. The devil's lettuce, if you will. But as I got older and when I got out of the military, my drinking, I think I doubled down on it. I don't know why. It just became a thing. I really enjoyed beer. I sound like Kavanaugh, Judge. I like beer.
I like beer.
So I started to really get into beer, the romance behind the beer, the crafting of it, especially Belgian ales and a lot of German beers and stuff like that. So as Judy and I got into home brewing, that took a whole new turn, and I started drinking really big beers, and that just progressed into drinking high alcohol, high sugar content, very unhealthy beers, followed by always eating very unhealthy food, just because that's what comes along with that whole celebration effect. When we moved in here, I don't know what happened, but I started I'd always liked wine in my life too, but when we moved here, for some reason, I started really getting into white wine. And I started doubling down on that with beer and a little bit of hard liquor here and there. And then I noticed, I'll never forget, it was probably about 9-10 months before I got sober. This had nothing to do with me planning on getting sober, but I remember getting off work and I sat down with Patrick, how we would do. There's no wine pour. It's like a 5
full glass.
big old gigantic.
Yeah, you walk around with a comically big one. It's just one glass of wine.
Yeah.
And it's a fishbowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember that I sat down with my bowl of peanuts and I was watching the news and I drank, like, look, 2 gulps. So it was probably like half a bottle of wine. Really? Because that's because we get it from our box wine. But where I'm going with this in a real long fashion is that I remember sitting there and I had never had alcohol hit me that rapidly. So something just lined up with my digestive system and everything and the stress of the day. And I felt really good. And I remember saying to myself right then during that time, you ever have those revelations of taking a drug or drinking? You're like, this has now changed me. right
The
then
veil has been pulled back.
Yeah, I was kind of excited, but a little like
Almost euphoric.
yeah, but at the same time I was like, oh shit, I just crossed into this is like my next level of alcoholism now. And then it was after that, every time Judy would go out, I'd be like, don't forget to get a couple cases of Busch and
box of wine.
couple Arrogant Bastards and several boxes of wine. So we'd always have that shit in stock. And then with the box wine, you're just always filling it up. So
And you can't, because it's a box wine, you can't see how much you're actually taking.
It's a
yeah,
juice box for adults.
Yeah.
Camelback.
yeah,
Whatever.
very cost effective. So in short, we could talk about it all day, but that was that's about it. I was thinking about it this morning, so we'll get into the cravings in a second, but you guys do your thing.
Do you want to go?
Sure. Drinking early for me was, sneaking beers at weddings and big events and stuff like that. Didn't really start into it until like my senior year in high school. But it was always tied around with the society standard of celebration, right? Mm-hmm. We're celebrating, bring out the booze. And so for early, these were gatherings of people that I haven't seen in a while, or, at a end of a large endeavor. So I'd always have like these very big feelings now that I kind of look back on it, just all the feelings, excited, nervous, happy to see everybody. But with my brain, leading up to that is a million different conversations, right? Like, I haven't seen this person in a while. What are they going to say? How am I going to be perceived? They're going to see through, all the glass frog stuff. And then like it just imposter syndrome, everything like that, just inner dialogue just starts to chatter. And like, it goes a million miles an hour. And as the feelings would ramp up, so too would the chatter. And immediately, when the time finally comes, we learned it's like right before the first drink. I always thought it was the first drink. I thought I was like Clark Kent going into the phone booth and pulling my clothes off to reveal my Superman, badge after my first drink. Cause I was finally like, now I can just relax and like shut the fuck up, whoever was chattering in my brain. Mm-hmm. And then just let loose. Like, I would go hard into the paint. Like, I love being the life of the party. I would make an ass of myself. I would, try and make a lot of jokes. Some days, some were funnier. Some days, some were very inappropriate. But I was just always seeking, to just validate the overwhelming emotions that I had. And I always went hard. For the majority of the times, early, it was a very binge cycle oriented. So go big and then, like off for a couple days and then big again. For that early, I just remember when I would get into it, you were always chasing that high that first one brings. And you were always hoping tomorrow would never come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Don't let the party stop.
Yep.
And I try to really embody that hard. And then the habits kind of, the celebration periods, when I was younger and it was around, it was for big events, like big gatherings of either the church or the people or weddings. And then it became like, as you get older, the occasion for the alcohol diminishes, meaning like, oh yeah, this one person's coming over. We're going to bust out the alcohol and go hard. Mm-hmm. And my point is, like, I always found an excuse to celebrate. And now that I look back on it, like, I really tied those together a lot when I was feeling overwhelmed. With not just bad emotion, but like good emotion that I didn't know how to process it. And just hitting that mute button was such a relief. It was such a relief. I can see why, it's addicting as it was, because I was drowning in my own incessant chatter, imposter syndrome and stuff.
Yeah.
But eventually, we've talked about it's stealing happiness from tomorrow. It begins to impact relationships. The times that I thought I was funny and I would say something that would damage relationships, or I would, act out not in control of my body, dangerous. I was lucky that I never, I would get in physical dust ups in college. I was lucky that I didn't get seriously injured in any of those. I was lucky enough to never devolve into any domestic violence items, but I can see how easy that precipice was. Just, I would just have to reach out my hand and enter into that realm. It was so easy.
Yeah.
In that state. Just because I didn't know how to deal with my emotions. So it was alluring.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there was many times, and we've been open about this, that Judy and I went out, day drinking, meet someone, and we just get super carried away, like starting at 11 a.m.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, it's 5 p.m. and we're just fucking hammered, super hammered, and just driving home.
Yeah, which was super scary.
I'll be very candid and apologetic that I drove more times than I should have, for sure. Hundreds. And I can't believe that if you believe in fate or religion or karma or whatever it is, I don't understand how it is that I never got pulled over or ran into a DUI checkpoint or, fucking heaven forbid, killed someone else with how drunk I was. I think I was a really good driver. Something happened at a conscious level when I get behind the wheel, but it's very, very self-destructive, very irresponsible, and I don't know whatever other adjective to put on it. But also Judy did the same thing.
I did.
What about you?
Okay, well, mine started when I was 10. I started smoking pot when I was 10 years old. I also started drinking periodically when I was young, before I got into high school. And that was, stealing drinks here and there and that kind of thing. When I got into high school, that's when Coke and meth got into the picture. So I was also experiencing those, along with smoking pot, along with drinking. When I was 16, I used to, because I was tall, I was 5'10", so I used to be able to sneak into bars. And so we'd do a couple rails of Coke, go sneak into a bar, drink a whole bunch of beer, and then stumble my ass home and go to school the next day. So, mine was pretty severe. Unfortunately, during that time, my mom was working all the time, so I didn't really have a parent figure around me. So I was just I'd sneak out of my house and come back at 5 o'clock in the morning through the window. Luckily, that all stopped. I'd say probably the last time I ever did any of the hard drugs was early 20s, like 21, 22, somewhere around there. I had finally just stopped doing. Actually, I take that back, because I was already through my first divorce. So I was 23 at the time. So that was like probably the last. And at that time, I got really into it again, got really heavy into the meth. And we called it crank. Big deal. It's meth. And I got really heavy into that during that period. And I got, for 5'10", I got down to 143 pounds. So I was about like that. And I don't know what changed in my head. There was just something that changed, and I just said, I can't do this anymore. Got away from that, moved out of the neighborhood, moved into with my mom in Concord. And we were sharing an apartment, and I was going to school full time and working full time. And, so I was able to get out of that. Didn't stop the drinking though. That was a constant throughout the whole thing. There was always drinking, and there was always smoking pot. Not as much as drinking at the time, but it was still there. I go to, blues and brews festivals and all kinds of different parties and stuff like that. And I got involved with some friends who were also heavy drinkers, and they lived close to me. So I would spend most of my time over at their place, drinking all kinds of booze and liquor and hard alcohol and cosmopolitans and you name it. So I'd been still smoking pot. So we got into, I met John, and I have to tell you, the first time I met him, I told his friend Skip, who introduced us, that I don't want to be around that guy because he's crazy. So next thing you know, I'm married to him.
Right.
So, I got through that and, married John, moved, kind of gravitated away from that group of friends because they were nice people. They were just heavily into their disease. And so it just dragged me right back into that disease. So I married John and we got into our own little alcohol bubble and ended up, brewing our own beer, ended up growing our own weed. So I had a constant supply of that as well. So I was, I had it around me 24/7. So I partook 24/7. And then
I think that's important too, for how you and I quit together and how it all tied into a codependent relationship.
Yeah.
I've seen other relationships that start that way too, and it's an interesting dynamic because we sort of established, looking back on it now, I didn't know it at the time, but we established our relationship around that drinking behavior.
Yeah, that's how our relationship started. We met at a party, so
Yeah, we had a celebratory effect on each other that included alcohol.
yeah. Then we got to the point to where we were, crying, and my liver was outside smoking a cigarette and flipping me off, and he was crying in his pillow, and we just decided that was it. But before that, I had quite the role of all kinds of different drugs. I never did heroin. I never stuck a needle in my arm, but I came close to doing pretty much everything else, which was not something I would boast, not something I would brag about, because those things were horrible to get off of. Mm-hmm. I would never want to try and do that now. But that being said, I'm super happy that I'm not doing anything like that at all. My drug of choice is coffee.
Decaf.
Decaf, yes. Not even caffeine.
So I had my share of experiences with cocaine and everything, and a few more others. And hearing your story made me really reflect. I remember specifically, just because either it wasn't around or I was like, oh, it just doesn't jive with my lifestyle. Mm-hmm. When I was getting to the point of it not being part of my life, I was looking back on that, it's so bizarre to be in that mindset and how pervasive alcohol was. Mm-hmm. During, you said, it's around, it's legal, it's accepted by society. Mm-hmm. And it was just around. If you would have asked me back then, if I was like, no thanks, I'm good on cocaine, I finally get to that point, I don't need don't need a bump, I don't need any rails. And somebody goes, oh yeah, you want to go do a couple beer bongs and, toss your guts up in 20 minutes and then puke and rally and then destroy yourself. So you can't really function this weekend without a couple beers or maybe some shots. And then it's going to cause you to be late the next couple days.
Hell yeah, man, let's go.
That sounds like a great fucking time.
Yeah. So ridiculous.
Yeah.
So ridiculous. Yeah. It was, I remember one time doing a huge fat line of crank and going and playing a basketball game in high school afterwards. in high school.
Heathen.
Terrible. It was terrible. I was just, yeah, it was bad. I'm so glad that I don't know what happened either. I do not know what caused me to just step
Did you do
back
good in
from
that
all of that.
basketball game? Were you like this fucking psychopath out there just dunk? No.
I did good, but my heart was pounding 1,000 miles an hour.
I bet.
But yeah, it was not, no bueno.
Well, thank you guys for your candor and vulnerability. I know that's kind of tough to discuss. I noticed you digging up bones and looking a little remorseful on some of that stuff.
Oh yeah, I you know what? I can't change the past. Nobody can change the past. I can't change what I did. I wish I didn't do a lot of that stuff. I wish I would have paid more attention to my scholastic adventures or path, but I didn't. There's nothing I can do about it.
Coulda,
now.
woulda, shoulda.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda. But I'm glad I did stop what I did when I did, and didn't allow it to take over my life and, you know, make myself live in a box underneath a bridge.
Yeah. Thank you, Odie and Fem, for the very nice comments. We appreciate that. Okay. Also important to note, all three of us were addicted to nicotine. So
Oh, yeah.
Patrick smoked and chewed tobacco. I did too. Very common thing for a lot of people. That I quit smoking when I was a truck driver. I was like, this stinks. I asked a girl out on a date in Wisconsin. She's like, you smell horrible. I was like, what the fuck? Yeah, that was an eye opener. I told you that story.
Yeah.
So I dabbled in tobacco. In the military, that was kind of a thing. Very handy to have your nicotine ingestion through some Copenhagen. Anyway, I got back into that. And fast forward, I ended up kicking the nicotine train a couple times. That fucking drug, man, I tell you. Because people that have never ingested nicotine, they do not understand. I tell people, people are like, I don't know why this person smokes. I'm like, you don't know the fucking hold that nicotine has. It feels so fucking good. Nicotine has its own ritual based 100%. It's the cap on everything too. It's how you start your day. It's how you finish a meal. It's how you,
when you get off work,
it's how you do anything. It's how you start to work on a task. It's how you cope with something like, oh shit. You know, it's the whole, our parents growing up, I think in the 70s and 80s too, it turned into a different ritualism. Everyone was smoking indoors. It was a thing. But yeah, nicotine is, and it really, I learned later on why I liked it so much. Nicotine really helped my attention deficit disorder. It's a real equalizer. That's why it's wildly addictive for people that have mental issues too.
Yeah, last fall I went to a concert with a friend, and I was like, we were standing outside just chewing the fat, it was like, and he had his cigarettes, and when I'd hung out with him, I'd always be like, hey, bum a cigarette or whatever. That was when I was still drinking. That was the first time since I'd been sober, and I grabbed it and I hit it. I took a couple drags, and I immediately felt like I was like, 12. It was like, I was about 12 when the first time I tried it. And you get that first one and you get like real fucking dizzy. And you're like, yeah, something's not right. And I about got sick with that, but I was able to calm down. But that made me realize, like, and that was something that I did, like you said, ceremoniously throughout the day, and it was kind of a bizarre trip to go back. I'm like, I immediately regret my decision doing that, and that was a wonderful gift.
Yeah,
good.
I gotta say that, which any smoker and drinker knows, that once you start drinking, those cigarettes are like candy. They just one after the other. I wasn't a heavy smoker. I could go, I could go weeks without having a cigarette. But then once I went and hung out with my friends and we started drinking, man, I would go through a pack of cigarettes like that.
Man, I mean, now that I look back on it, it's really tough. Of course, dealing with alcohol and the hard drugs, those were like, the capstones, but looking at the day-to-day activity, how pervasive nicotine and alcohol was, like I was just lurching from like coping mechanism to coping mechanism, like throughout the fucking day. No wonder a lot of people, say going sober, like I'm raw dogging it, it's without any toolkits to like process emotion and stuff like that. And if you're using mechanisms like smoking and drinking and a whole bunch of other stuff, mix that in with a whole bunch of other habits too that can also fill that gap.
White knuckling becomes very literal.
Yeah.
I unfortunately see, I think I equate this to your statement, Patrick, of you're either sober or you're dry.
Yeah.
I have a stereotype, and I'll just be honest, and that is when I go to AA meetings or have been, when I see the guy that is just power chugging, caffeinated coffee and smoking a pack of cigarettes in 2 hours, I feel, sorry, this feels like I'm doing some weird comparison. It's just, if you to your point, if you're just white knuckling your situation and you're still using these other substances as a coping mechanism, I think you need to take a deeper dive, just like we all have, into what you're trying to fix. Because you've seen it's just like smoking, just chug cigarettes, chugging coffee. Is like, well, dude, calm the fuck down.
We always joke when I was in college. We're like, yeah, so and so's actually already dead. They've just been, alive by monsters and cigarettes and everything, being fueled by that and pure spite, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, I want to kind of tangent off of this, and we were actually talking about this on the Discord about feeling these always in a state of seeking, unable to cope, and how we can have different mechanisms that fill that. And some rely on this, and we mainly talk about the chemical ones, alcohol, and we were talking about nicotine, and then, meth and pot and, and those fit the traditional addiction mold where your body chemistry changes and you're reliant upon the substance, and like trying to go clean from that, you need medical advice or direction sometimes. Yeah, like it can fuck with you quite a bit. But to the other point, somebody's like, well, you can't actually get addicted to video games. And
can't get addicted to food or shopping either.
And we were talking about that, and the truth is you can, but it doesn't happen in the same way. And we came to the point where there's a point where you have to delineate this, and it's very important. All of them are a state of seeking or an inability to cope. And when held correctly, behavioral coping mechanisms can be very good for you. Working out for those endorphins and whatever, and processing. But if you're not doing the work within, and you're just like, if your mechanisms run, and every time you're under stress, you just run and don't deal with the stress, you're just going to be running forever, right? What we wanted to honor was that there are items that, chemically change your interactions and everything in dealing with that. And there's that part of addiction. And then the other is behavioral. What this is not to diminish either side of that, because in the book of The Realm of Hungry Ghosts, Mate talks about, like, he's dealing with people like that are coming in and getting their methadone and everything like that, and he's talking about like how the amount of trauma in those person's lives are just
extensive.
is ridiculous. But then he goes on and talks about his ADHD and how has a proclivity to buy classical
discs. Yeah.
and what came light of this is like somebody was like, imagine like being in the conversation and was like, yeah, I had to do X behaviors on the street to get my next hit. And somebody goes, oh yeah, I totally get that. Like I had, maybe their tell is like shoplifting or something like that. Like I picked up a pair of gloves from Target. I totally get that. And why at first is like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's not to diminish one or the other, and obviously one comes with a stigma and a certain amount of pain. But the truth is, at the core of it, either being chemically influenced or not, or behavioral, it's being in that state of seeking and validation that we kind of derive from. And
I was just sitting here thinking about when I was going through all of that, the coke and the meth and the pot and the everything, what I was trying to find in those chemicals that I was not getting in my life, because I never actually sat back and thought about that until just now.
Well, that's scary too. We've talked about the power of self-empowerment and self-realization. What's scarier to an addict? They don't want to be alone themselves, and to tell them like happiness is within your control.
Yeah. Happiness comes from within.
I would be like, fuck, give me another bong hit then.
Yeah.
Cause I'm fucked,
Yep.
And it's this weird, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. I was too scared to realize that, because if I were to take the time and say like happiness does come with it from within, and guess what? You might fail at it, and it may not be what you think it is, but that's an awesome thing.
Yeah.
But you have to at least try. You
Yeah.
have to at least give yourself a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lisa snuck in. Hey, Wendy. Wendy snuck in. So Lisa said one of the worst withdrawals for me was when she quit caffeine. Yeah. All three
caffeine.
of us did that.
Wicked headache.
Caffeine headache
wicked
is
headache.
nasty.
Yeah, Lisa, I quit April, May. I decided that after I quit, had my medication discontinuation and all of that stuff, I found myself still anxious, and I didn't realize I was drinking 2 to 3 cups of high octane coffee, and I quit that. And my first 3 days, I don't think mine were super bad, but I had the headaches and the doldrums and all of that. And then I got Patrick on the quitting caffeine train too. Patrick, you had a pretty rough ride for about a week, huh?
Yeah, those the headache, like I was expecting the morning ones, but they would come on like later and later the longer I was away from it. And so they're like, for some reason, the days 7 through 10, like they came on like late in the day and held on strong.
Damn.
So
Yeah.
So yeah, and then we accidentally picked it back up, and we Patrick, when I told you, we accidentally had bought the caffeinated. It's real true accident. We drank it and we're like, God damn, we felt really good
For that one day.
for that one day. And then I found myself chasing that again. Remember I told you, I'm like, yeah, caffeine is doing wonders for me. I look back then we haven't touched it again. I had to quit because my fucking panicky stuff started to come back. It just my brain's a mess from it. So we had to quit.
I'm very thankful for being sober now, and I like how we're talking on this about filling something, filling a need. And for me, the way I can describe it is that self-validation. We never knew how to be okay with ourselves. We had to seek validation from others or something, like learning to, even Fim said it earlier, being okay in your own skin. That's part of it. Like being like learning to say, I love you just the way you are for yourself. Right? Oh,
Hey, Oz.
we got a buddy. That's part of that, we're always seeking that, not being okay in our own body. So that, for a lot of people, that's what that whole is. And it manifests in different ways, on the spiritual journey of how to do that. My heart goes out for those, still struggling and going through a lot of that. And I'm very thankful for the opportunities that this journey has helped, reveal. but the point that I wanted to make was, now that, you mentioned going back to coffee or seeing it, like, it is amazing how sensitive, like, now that I'm like aware, a little bit more aware of triggers and things, I had to, instead of short circuiting the brain and saying, I can't fucking deal with this, and you go and drink, the hard part of the journey is like learning to sit with, like, this is how my body feels when it's uncomfortable. I feel I feel uneasy. I feel like super tense, and I'm looking for something. And you have to learn to, like, feel how your body feels during those situations to understand what leads up to it, right? Now that you can read those cues and you see them coming, and you have you grab that cup of coffee and you just down it. Like, I had a on the way to DC, we did 17-hour shot, and I had like a Monster and a Mountain Dew within that time period. When I was a kid, that was like, how many did you have, right? Did you have a whole pack? And they were spread out, and one was like, since we were up nearly the whole time, but like, I can tell you, like, my body had some serious fucking jet lag after that, not only from the lack of sleep, but I could feel
Caffeine drop,
that impact, right? The sensitivity towards that. Like I said, with the cigarette, the time later, it's just like, if you're more in tune with your body, with the triggers that are happening, so too with the stimulants that you used to seek. And I'm like, no wonder I was always just chasing this. This took me as far away of my body as I should have been. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's just like, I made a wish of, take me far away from here. Please, God, do something. And I just put all this shit in my body and says, okay, done.
Yeah. And that's a good example, Patrick, of how I've felt in the last few months of becoming more comfortable with how I have relaxed internal celebratory moments, if that makes any sense. So anymore, I feel more comfortable being uncomfortable versus having some sort of chemical influence, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I'm much more happy and focused dealing with my own inequities and shortcomings and just working through them. That's what gives me peace and solace instead of reaching for something. So that's good.
Yeah.
Dang, we got to get into our cravings. That's the show.
I was going to try to segue back in there. When we first quit drinking, one of the things that helped us when we were doing something that would trigger those cravings, like going out and mowing the lawn and then coming back and having an ice cold beer. One of the things that helped us when we were going through that, when we first initially started that, was seltzer water. It gave you that carbonation kick that a beer would. That's not super sweet, like a beer's not super sweet, and it quenched your thirst. And he came in, and after he was building the shed outside, and he came in and he said, "Man, I really want a ice cold beer right now." And I was like, "Well, here, have a seltzer water." And he drank it. He's like, "Okay, I'm good." And he went back out and started building the shed.
Left my phone on over there. Sorry.
Shame.
That was one of my revelations too. Is the first time I came into the house and I proclaimed to Judy. I was a little frustrated. I was like, I could really use a fucking beer. And she handled it like a champ too. She was like, all right, let's figure out what to do. That was right after I quit drinking. Yeah,
that was only like the first day or two.
It's amazing how well we can train our body. We're the prediction modeling machines. I'm seeking something. I can't stand to be here. I can't process my emotions. Time to use something to help get me away from just that state. And repeated behavior and over. That's the other hard part about getting sober is those are so automated in us, and the difficulty is learning to bring awareness to it, because I remember trying to get sober, and there'll be like days where where you could white knuckle a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden you like look back and you're like, I just did a 3-day bender without realizing how the fuck I got there. I walked in after mowing the lawn, or I
Yeah, that's a
So-
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've done that. Like, I'm gonna take it easy this weekend. 5 days later, like, what the fuck happened?
So I always loved, like, this is one that I really held on to early, was that PAC acronym: prevent, abstain, cultivate, and keep. And we did this in a behavioral thing to deal with the cravings, because until you can give yourself enough grace to bring awareness to those situations, you're gonna have to combat it with other behavioral mechanics, like having the seltzer water, or, you know, for some people, just not having booze in the house, not making the options for your coping mechanisms available. And
That was a big one. We took all of our booze and gave it away.
because the hard part is, like, you walk in and you're like, oh, mowing the lawn, I got to have a beer. And you realize that Rube Goldberg machine started a fucking hour and a half or several hours ago.
Oh yeah,
Right. By the time you realize that you're ready for a beer, or you're asking for it, like, everything in your body had been put in motion well before that. So early, you just have to learn, you know, like seltzer water or whatever, getting the fuck out of there or whatever. That's the real painful part, because your body, like, catapults you all the way to that point. You know, when you're getting sober, you can learn to step that back a little bit more, that you don't get to that point. And,
Yeah.
and that's helpful. And that's why I say PAC is prevent, abstain, cultivate, and keep. First step is just preventing yourself from drinking. You know, the second,
Partaking in that.
yep, the second would be abstaining from behaviors to get you to that point. And then cultivate is talking about the new behaviors, bringing in new behaviors, you know, to help process that, you know,
New
working
routines.
down our dog and
Yeah.
or
Down
other
our dog.
or other items to, like, help replace that behavior. And then keep is reinforcing those behaviors and making those new ones easier to get to. You know, this is just building the coping mechanisms that we have completely, like, overlooked or tried to short circuit our entire lives.
I remember when I was quitting smoking cigarettes, you know how you have that cigarette after a meal? Well, I immediately got up and went and did the dishes so that I wouldn't have that craving for that
Man,
cigarette.
Nicotine was the hard. I think, in some respects, that one was harder for me. I had more relapses off and on again
oh me too.
with nicotine
Yep.
than I did
Years.
with any other
Yeah.
substance. Yeah.
Yep.
And man, I call them itches, you know, the urges, because they come up, they feel like they come up out of nowhere and they demand your most immediate attention. And you
Yeah.
are so one track to relieve that sensation that you're like, it's an itch. You know what? You know the feeling. If I just scratch it, it's gone. Right. I get done with that nice hearty meal, a little stressed out after the day, and your body goes through the ritual.
Yeah.
I need the relief. I'm trying to get there. And you're automated to that point of reaching for that, you know, the cigarettes or whatever.
Oh yeah, I still have a craving every once in a while. They're very brief and they're only like a split second. But I see somebody lighting up a cigarette and I'm like, oh yeah, I know. That looks good. No, it doesn't. No. Ew, no.
So Patrick, before I got sober, I consciously started chewing nicotine gum again. I needed something. I was drinking a lot and I needed something to refocus my brain. So I started, a lot of nicotine gum, very expensive habit. But okay. So let's jump into, I'm just going to talk about some of my triggers and then how I cope with them.
Go for it.
So now that we know I'm a beer and wine drinker, my trigger moments are visual for me. So yesterday we were at the grocery store and we were checking out and I was talking to Judy, and right over her shoulder was this huge display of Robert Mondavi white wine. And my fucking mouth started watering. It's a very visceral reaction because, and I realized, and I talked to Judy after this, our brains, because of the survival mechanism, we romanticize it so much. There's
nostalgia.
Yeah,
It's
you're
back to highlight reel.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Your
all the good
brain's
points.
just like, oh, this is so good. It's almost like you could have a bottle of wine, you'll be okay. That's not going to be a thing
Can't
because
have just one.
That's why we always have to force ourselves, and this is my coping mechanism for the cravings, is I always just fast forward of all the times. There's never, ever been a single time where just that one glass of wine or beer made me feel super good the next day. There was always a ramification that came from it. So the visual proponent of it is I've been catching myself a lot in the last 6 months. I watch, Netflix, Hulu or whatever, and watch series. And man, sometimes when someone will pour a beer in like my favorite pub pint glass, I just fucking stare at it on TV. I'm like, that is a beautiful pour. And I see they have a sip of it and, maybe some foam on their lip. I see my mouth is watering now. And then, watching the foam cascade down slowly on the glass when they drink it. And I really love the social aspect of getting together for pints of beer. It's just it's like a measure of success and perfection in our lives, and it's very successful.
Interesting that the physical stimulus is one that hung around with you.
Yeah, it's diminishing. It's still going away, but it's still there. I'll be honest. It's pretty powerful. It's a little bit frustrating. When we first quit drinking, I don't know if Dad thought we were just going through a phase. I don't know if he had the faith. So he would, us being craft beer manufacturers and consumers, he would still drink beer, and it was difficult for me to sit. It was me trying to get comfortable with the whole situation of being sober, but he would, bring in whatever. Around here, Patrick, we got all the craft beers. So we'd bring home a 6-pack, and it's like, look at this beer, what I got. And oh man, it's delicious. And there came a point where I think I childishly snapped, and I'm like, could we do something? And that is, I don't want to hear you talking about beer anymore. So I found at a time that was a good boundary to set. I didn't have to feel weak or embarrassed about that. It was just like, hey, I'm working really hard at this, and if you're going to continue to drink beer and we live under the same roof, don't showcase it, because it's already fucking there. And so he very, very respectfully, he took his beer and he puts it away. So I'm not walking around fucking seeing it all the time. We don't need a constant reminder, and you shouldn't. If you're in recovery, you don't have a little fucking thing of white dust sitting around, looking at it, no matter what it is. Or
some wine sitting right there.
My wife still drinks, and like I said, she leaves her cheerleader beers out, so, she'll leave her Truly or her half unfinished wine out on the table, and
that's gotta be hard.
No, my triggers are not the physical stuff, believe it or not. And I mentioned this early, was my last one was at Thanksgiving when we traveled, and it was literally, you get thrown into a house with a bunch of people that I only met a handful of times by proxy, and they're using the alcohol as a social lubricant there. It's a very rambunctious group, and of course there was a lot of those family personalities, and they come at you, and you're like, I remember there's a couple questions and statements brought up there. I'm like, are you out of a fucking cartoon? Are you serious right now? And I wanted to be like that, and of course I'm like, well, I gotta smile, nod, look at the baby, smile, nod, you don't want to upset the apple cart. You're there for your partner, right? But at the same time, you're not going to be like, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to start off this Thanksgiving. We're going to just drop a little misogyny and racism, and we're going to be cool with it. Yeah. Cool. And get fucked. That's what I really wanted to be. And that itch just kind of because, normally, I shouldn't say normally. In the past, I would just, put the booze in my system and the social lubricant, and just kind of oh, those are some awkward feelings. We'll just step around it. We'll make some awkward jokes. And, I feel like I was almost had a motor on me sometimes. I felt like if I could be a life of the party or get people to do things or play games or like whatever, like I could control the narrative at that point. And so whatever shitty opinions might appear, I wouldn't have to deal with them. So like those, so that itch comes up very strong sometimes and out of nowhere where I feel like very overwhelmed. I don't know why the physical one didn't sit, you know, like at first it did, but like I don't really get romantic around it because the fizzy drinks, the more I learn to be present, the more I like enjoy. So like a LaCroix after a hot day in a task or whatever, or like there's other, I get overstimulated to the point where just finding a more subtle one where I could be present was helping me enough with the physical stimulus. It was just the overstimulation, like emotionally and whatever. Those are the times where I really feel like I get drowned in a sea of like, I don't know what to call it. It's a mix between just like, I feel this ever existential dread come on that like I can't fucking process this, and these emotions are like so far away from where I want to be, right? Like, you know, like dealing with those difficult personalities, like I said, to the point like, did you seriously just fucking say that? Now I'm like, this person in this family is fucking crazy. Like I wouldn't count on them for anything. In fact, I really don't want to be around them after they have a couple more drinks in them because I don't know what the fuck they're gonna do. Right? Or like just knowing this type of person makes me want to take a fucking shower.
Yeah.
And like
yeah,
like that type of overwhelming like just gets me, you know. And then you know, and sometimes I have to go through the whole process, like, you know, where I have to learn to empathize with the person and like learn their perspectives. And it's like, fuck you for making me try to care about you. You know, you came in swinging. It's easier to look at you as a fucking caricature, you know, if you're gonna spout that shit off. Now I can see why you're so fucking angry. I'm not condoning your misogyny or your racism, but like, you know, fuck you for making me feel the feels. Right? I didn't want to process this. I didn't want to be here. And then finally I get through the other side and it's like, all right, they're just another person. They're just grabbing onto whatever they know. And too bad it's a big pile of shit too.
It's hard to deal with those personalities, especially when you really don't want to have to deal with that personality at all. There was Dr. Carolyn Mace. She does energy anatomy work, and she said sometimes she just goes, I bless you, but I gotta go. And that's it. If you can leave that environment, by all means leave that environment, because that's definitely a trigger. Yeah,
you know, you treat it like if you don't have the coping mechanisms for that, you know, pack, right? Prevent, abstain, cultivate, and keep. If you don't have the coping mechanisms to like work through that and deal with that, you know, a good one is like learning to get yourself the fuck out of there. And if you can't do that, then substitute, you know, like,
find your own, build your own little toolbox, grow your own little garden that will help you deal with those uncomfortable situations that are going to pop up in life. They just are. But if you can definitely get out of that situation, that will help your sobriety 100%.
The other two is that becomes another like that's a tool in itself. Like I don't know how to explain this part of the sobriety when you're like we're forever seeking validation or something to be somewhere else. When you get put in that situation, it's like you're having to go through the stages of grieving process. Meaning like, I'm here, I don't want to fucking be here, and I'm upset, you know, like I'll try to do it denial, you know, you could use a substance to do it, or, you know, you begin bargaining like, well, maybe if I can do X, Y, and Z.
And then you get angry.
And then you get angry about it. Like I often exist in the angry level, a lot of that stuff, just because I'm just pissed that I wasn't, you know, dealing with those people. And then for me, I look at my kids and I just see tiny mirrors of myself sometimes, and I'm like, this is where it fucking starts. This is where it fucking starts. When they see their role models or peers and people around them who don't know how to deal with this, of course they're gonna want to this alcohol is fun. These lines of Coke have been amazing, and
they emulate what they see because they think that's
right.
The way life is supposed to be. That's what you're supposed to do, and that is definitely not.
So it's all kind of like a revealing thing. I get angry and I'm still, like I said, fuck you for making me feel the feels, and I sit there and I'm like, I still get upset like a toddler, a temper tantrum, like, I don't want to fucking be here. I don't want to fucking deal with this. I don't want to be a role model for the kids. I feel like I'm forced into this position, right? Because of your shitty behavior. And then it just kind of unfolds, and it's like, yeah, they don't get to pick to be here either. Right? And
is that when you get to your acceptance?
Yeah. I still hold on. My acceptance comes a lot very begrudgingly, but that's my nature. That is very in my nature, because you've seen within my inner dialogues how the depth of the meta about it, like how dare you make me feel the feels, or how dare you make me feel sympathetic for you. I want to stay angry at you, or I want to keep you as a caricature where you're just like overtly racist, so I can just write you off as a shitty human being.
That latter one, that's what I do. I get that caricature. I got to work on that still. All in due time. I'm working on myself.
I mean, in the situations where you can get the fuck out of there, of course, yeah, you're like, all right, boundary set. I don't need to deal with you when they're in situations like, and this is why this time of year is very hard for people.
Right.
Yes.
You put them in family and friends where you feel like you have an expectation to be there, or it's one thing if you're at work or in a social environment where you can pick those boundaries, but if you're dealing with family members or whatever, where those boundaries get smeared, and it's like, I couldn't be like, well, so-and-so is just being a overtly racist asshole. I'm going to pick up and leave.
Unfortunately, with family,
I'll
there's
see
so
you,
much
wife and kids.
Yeah.
There's
so much emotional connotation attached, and so much history attached to that you can't, it's very hard to separate.
And if I, and that's what even folds even further. If I would say like, I don't feel comfortable here, I'd like to go. Oh, Patrick, you're just being a fucking stick in the mud. Yeah. Like, why are you ruining Thanksgiving?
Right.
Yeah.
How come you can't fucking deal with this?
Yeah.
And then that's like even doubly like, you can see my mind. Like I find all the avenues towards anger. I choose every anger avenue until I can like acquiesce or come down to the path of acceptance and finally get there.
Yeah.
It feels like a lifetime sometimes in my head. And it was no wonder that I chose alcohol along that stuff, because I would get frustrated along that journey and or wouldn't be able to give myself enough grace to. One of our sayings is like, if you're lost at sea, you hit the shark closest to the boat. If I was in that situation and I was still smoking, I'd be like, I have to go smoke a cigarette. I could easily be outside and like, why are you still fucking smoking cigarettes? You just gave up alcohol, and you're just, there's always something. There's always something to be angry about. And remember, it's not about trying to escape where you're at. It's just trying to learn to accept being happy where you're at. I love you for who you are. Mm-hmm. And if you can learn to say that in your darkest point, I think you're on one step to recovery there.
That takes work.
There's a Buddhist saying that says there is in every person an inner Buddha. So to try and look at that person and see that inner Buddha can be very, very hard. But if you keep that kind of, for me, if I keep that kind of in the back of my mind, it helps me to work through the layers of shit
Yes.
that is on top of that
Yeah,
person.
so there's a lot of tools. We talked about this. What is this person here to teach me? What
Yes,
is
that's
this
another one,
situation
yeah.
here to teach me? How can I be present? It's funny that we talk about these triggers and these behaviors, whether it be on a global scale of our sobriety or just dealing with an incident right at hand and trying to process. The answer is just to breathe
Yeah.
and
Take a
be
breath.
present. No matter how fucking dark it gets, always breathe.
I did a short this morning on that exact same thing. Okay, so we got to get wrapping it up here. You didn't really, to summarize my cravings, they're visual, and for me to get past them, I just have to play the tape fast forward and then it just kind of goes away. And I celebrate those moments too, like, yeah, good job, you fucking alcoholic. Like, another success. I joke, but we left the store, we were driving down the road, and we had to do, traffic was all shitty, there was all these people. I really handled it all like a champ. I was proud of myself.
You did very well.
Judy and I forgot to get that little gift card, and so I was like, yeah, we're going to Michael's, so it was like right down the road, and then Judy reminded me, like, Michael's is way over. I'm like, what? So that full disclosure, I was like, we're
That's
going
how
to
we
fucking
ended up at
Hobby Lobby. But I took a moment to celebrate a success for myself too. I was like, I'm not fucking freaking out. Patrick, there's so many people yesterday.
Oh my gosh, it was
Past me
madhouse.
would have been like, immediately stop. We need to go get a beer.
Yeah.
Or panic attack or
panic or anger. Just
Yes.
fucking.
Yeah. I'm done
just
with this.
Ruining myself and ruining the day because of the choice I was gonna make to not deal with shit.
Yep.
So very selfish of me to be selfish about my own feelings.
Odie has a topic. I have an idea for a topic about form of addiction that does not include substances like video games.
Yeah, I like that. We'll get that one queued up. We got to talk about our other ones too. That's a good one. Okay.
I wanted to go back to my cravings. My cravings are probably more emotionally based. I see the commercials about people sitting at a bar, and I miss that kind of environment, that camaraderie that used to, the memories that were attached to those moments, I think, are my cravings. My triggers are still watching TV and seeing people hanging around a bar, or the names of some of the beers and some of the drinks that they had that they come out. And then I look at the name and I think, oh man, that really sounds good. I'd love to try that. But I'm not gonna. Those are some of my cravings. The white wine in summertime. That was just, the first couple days of summer, a glass of white wine sitting outside, birds are chirping, flowers blooming. That's
the romance of it all.
Corona with that lime on the Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just
yes.
one.
Yeah, you can never have just one.
Half a bottle of Jose in jail later.
Yeah. So it was those are the kind of emotional things that kind of get triggered when I see visual stimulations like commercials and billboards and stuff like that. Those are my triggers. And my cravings, I probably would think just the different flavors of the beers and the different drinks that were there that I would like to taste. Those are kind of cravings that I have. But other than that,
How do you handle them?
I fast forward the tape. I think about what I feel. I also think about what I would actually be putting in my body and how bad that is. And that's actually, I convert that beautiful picture of that lovely drink into toxin. That's a glass full of anthrax. That's how I convert it to for me to take that step back and go, oh, I would never. That's a glass of antifreeze. Why would I want to drink that?
Yep. That was a good one early. I think Annie Grace talks about this is like when you have that fundamental shift and you can view it as a poison right up front. So that way you have your own alert system.
Yes.
When you see the stuff, you're like, when you have the feelings, because I love how we're all talking about this and it's inextricably woven between behavior, emotion, and, you know, the physicality of it. Like at some aspect, we've just woven that into our life that they interplay with each other. But if you can immediately like say, like have some sort of warning system, be like, hey, whatever you're feeling about it, know that you're reaching for that, you know, like skull and crossbones. Like this,
Yes.
this is straight poison.
This is poison. You are now reaching for antifreeze.
Yeah, I know we talk about this stuff, and I said we get pretty deep, but this stuff goes a lot deeper than what we're
Yes.
talking about. You know,
Yes.
When I got off of all of the antidepressants, I kind of joked, but Patrick, I told you, and I think I proclaimed it on the show once, I quit caffeine. And I had a moment where I woke up one day and I was just like, there's nothing left in my life.
It's amazing what the
How
body
fucking
does,
weird.
like when it manifests in your chatter in your head. Because you
Yeah.
can read the book and you're like, it's gonna make me do X, Y, and Z and feel this way and do this to my chemicals, and then all of a sudden your brain goes, yeah, you know what, you want to know what that like actually sounds like to me talking to you? Everything you know in your life sucks and has turned to dust. What the fuck have you done? You're a piece of shit. And you're like, dude, I just had a chemical imbalance. He's like, yeah, shut the fuck up.
I know. But it's so powerful, the way we hijack ourselves. Really, like,
Yeah.
I'm sober, I'm happy, I have everything going for me, but there's something in my brain goes, you have nothing left in your fucking life, bro.
See, this is why I tell you, your brain will lie to you.
Yep.
Always.
It will fully lie to you.
Patrick, also, maybe I'm glad we didn't know each other when we were drinking, because we'd probably be we'd have been best buds, going to jail a lot.
That would have been a nightmare.
And then I'm afraid we wouldn't be friends, because
I'm amazed about the serendipity of life sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah, that you two met after you both got sober.
We had every reason to meet before we were sober, though.
Yeah,
too.
because you both worked with each other.
And lived in proximity to each other and had very similar activities. And
Yeah.
Yeah, it is very serendipitous that you guys did not meet until after both of you got sober. That is pretty cool.
Yep. Okay, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much, Lisa, Fem, Odie, and whoever else joined today. The lively conversations. I know we don't talk to them in real time, but please know that we're reading them, and it's fantastic back and forth.
Fem, I do want to attack the sugar, because that's going to be coming up in my life really soon.
Yeah. Yes. We'll talk about that later. I want to thank everyone for the support. We've got, man, Patrick, 203,000 views. So
Pretty stellar.
Yeah, thanks for all the support. 616 subscribers. Okay, let's wrap it up. We don't have a discussion for next week. The topic that you're going to talk about, I think I need a little bit more study time.
Oh, yeah, we need a study, but I would like to. Are we going to have a show next week?
We are. Are you going to
Okay.
be here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So we'll get the topic out there. I want to talk about Odie's later on, but there's a couple more that we had queued up, and let's huddle after this one.
I want to at least throw that one out for other viewers to know. Like, one topic that was brought up by my brother, and I'm really interested to dig into this one, is the relationship between CTE and TBI and alcoholism. So traumatic brain injury, and alcoholism, and the interplay for that. Because yes, we need to study for it, but I have found there's it's so striking what is out there and what is not out there.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
yeah.
I didn't think much of it, but there is definitely a correlation. It's the whole chicken and the egg thing. What causes what? But there's a causality and a relationship there. But there's not a terrible amount of further studies of just saying that they're related. So I think that's going to be an interesting topic.
Yeah, so traumatic brain injuries, especially from sports folks, football players, boxers.
The others, not just sports. So the other big category I found were vets with PTSD. You know, this comes from like shell shock type of stuff, and the amount of impacts that they go through just through training bases.
Dr. Almond says, Amen, Amen. I never pronounce that correctly.
Amen.
He says that he says your brain is a very soft tissue type of gray matter, and your skull is very hard, and it has a lot of jagged points on there. So constantly having your brain thrust into your skull is so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you do that while you're drunk, it's like trying to run a race when you have a broken ankle. Like it's a feedback loop.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is what I was trying to say, the chicken or the egg thing. So if you get a brain injury while you're drunk, it exacerbates things. If you get a traumatic brain injury, you're also more susceptible for addiction and alcoholism because you know, it impacts emotional regulation. So it's this weird feedback. We can, as you can already tell, it was an interesting topic brought up to me, and I was really surprised to kind of just uncover at surface level what is, you know, like, I think that's it's going to be an interesting topic to say the least.
I'm excited about that one.
Yeah. Oh, hey, when are we finalizing our special guest?
I am off from work right now, so I need to reach back out.
All right.
Well, I want to wish everybody.
Someone in our chat may be a special guest in January. It's coming. It's like a couple weeks around the corner.
Yeah. I want to wish everybody a happy holidays, whether it's today or this weekend or Monday or January 7th. Just have a wonderful holiday season.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll see you next Saturday. Thank you so much for the support.
Thank you.
Be kind to yourselves. Be patient with yourselves. You are loved. And you're fucking awesome. See you guys next time. Yes, Fem, in chat, the guest. Secret. Okay, spoiler alert. No, Odie's not flying from Serbia. That'd be epic, though.
That would be cool.
Not yet.
All right. Bye, y'all.